Geeky Ohana. So this video was a bit unplanned. I started trying to break down what the story for season 2 might be. Originally, I was going to have it be part of my video covering the crew, but I thought it would work better on its own. There's a lot of speculation in this video, way more than I usually would want to include. I tried to clearly label where I'm guessing, but it's probably best just to approach the entire video with a giant grain of salt. Also, I had this video pretty much completed, and then the 2022 New York Comic-Con panel happened. I tried to work in some of the information we got from the panel into this video, but I still advise you to seek out panel breakdowns from other amazing content creators to check out things I probably missed. And of course, since I'll be going over some plot points from the books, if you have not read the books and/or don't want to be spoiled, please stop the video now. Okay, so, Season 2. What's the story? First, let's cover some official answers from Rafe. In a Twitter Q&A, he said that Season 2 would contain pieces of Books 1, 2, and 3, and that they're trying to get a fair amount of what's done in Books 1 through 3 done by the end of Season 2, so that Season 3 can be a much closer adaptation of The Shadow Rising. He does note that large parts of Books 1 through 3 are still being held for later. Finally, in the 2022 New York Comic-Con panel, Rafe says,
Season 2 takes us really through the end of the first section of the books, which I think is the end of Book 3.
Season 3 adapting the story of The Shadow Rising has been something hinted at as far back as February 2021, in an interview with actor Lolita Chakrabarti, who plays Marin Alvear. In the interview, it was stated that her role would become a larger one if and when the show reaches its 3rd season. In the show, as in the books, we last left Marin Alvear in the Two Rivers, when Moraine leaves with Rand and company. In the books, we don't see Marin again until the story returns to the Two Rivers in The Shadow Rising. One more hint regarding storylines may be an offhanded comment from Rafe during the 2021 New York Comic-Con panel, in which he says,
when we're in a production meeting and I'm like, okay, well then this character is going to die in season 3, and they're like, no!
This is not what a lot of people have been theorizing. But upon hearing this, the conclusion I immediately jumped to was that one of Alana's warders, who dies off screen in The Shadow Rising, would be meeting his demise on screen in season 3. Rest in peace, Owen. Finally, we have this comment from book consultant Sarah Nakamura that Season 3 will mainly follow the events in Book 4. Okay, so we've established that Season 3 will be mainly Book 4, The Shadow Rising. So what does that mean for Season 2? Well, let's break things down a little bit by looking at what we hope will be a whole 8-season adaptation. In this ideal scenario, the last battle will obviously be in Season 8. Now, let's look at the midpoint of the series. This is where we'd want to have a midpoint reversal for the whole story, when something major happens that leaves everything shaken up. In my opinion, this has to be Dumai's Wells, or the end of Book 6. So, now we can just look at the first half of the story, from the Two Rivers through Dumai's Wells. We already know what Season 1 covered. With the question of who is the Dragon Reborn, it covered mostly Book 1 while also laying a lot of world-building groundwork from future books. We know Season 3 will be mostly Book 4, so we can guess that Season 4 will be mostly Books 5 and 6, with Dumai's Wells as the climax. The major plot threads of Book 4 are Rand and company going to the Aiel Waste, including Rhuidean and the subsequent fallout, Perrin returning to the Two Rivers, Nynaeve and Elaine going to Tanchico, and the White Tower coup. So, looking at Season 2, the challenge becomes, how do we get the characters to where they need to be in the story so that they'll be ready to tackle those Season 3 plot points? One thing we do know right now is that Season 2 will have Falma and the Heroes of the Horn as the climax, or at least part of it. That's pretty vague though. What about the rest of the season? Let's take a look at a grossly oversimplified chart of what happened in Book 2, The Great Hunt. The main characters start together in the book, but then they split into 2 main groups. The girls go to Tar Valon to train, Nynaeve takes her accepted test, and then they get tricked into leaving Tar Valon and end up in Falma. The boys go on a quest to get the stolen horn and dagger. They're separated along the way, with Ran having some adventures in Portal Stone World and also causing chaos in Kyrian, while Perrin and Mat stay with the Shinarans. They are eventually reunited and make their way to Falma. There's a big battle at Falma between White Cloaks and Shanchan, and Ran battles Balsman. Again. Now, let's look at a grossly oversimplified chart of Book 3, The Dragon Reborn. The book starts with the characters separated. The girls and Mat have left for Tarvalon months ago. Egwene and Elaine take their accepted tests and are sent to Tyr. Mat gets healed permanently, heads to Andor with Tom, and then heads to Tyr to save the girls. Meanwhile, Ran takes off for Tyr on his own, and Perrin, Moiraine, and Lan pursue him. They all end up in Tyr, where Ran fights Balsamon. Again. As other fans have more eloquently pointed out, there are a lot of similar story beats in books 2 and 3, so it makes sense to combine these two books. Let's see where we left our main characters in Season 1 for hints on how this might position them for Season 2. At the end of Season 1, Episode 8, Rand is on his own. Moiraine lost her ability to channel, and it's likely that Season 2 will involve Moiraine and Lan searching for help for Moiraine. Mat is in Tarvalon, possibly in search of the dagger, and though he doesn't know it yet, he's poised to be pursued by members of the Red Aja. Perrin is in Faldara, possibly and probably on the hunt for Fane, who just stole the Horn of Valyr and stabbed a bunch of people. And finally, Egwene and Nynaeve are ready to head back to the White Tower for actual training. So, in Season 2, these are my guesses. Let's start with the ones I suspect are the easiest to shift, the girls and Mat. They're all in Tar Valon. The girls will be training in the White Tower, and Mat might find himself in the White Tower anyway, being poked and prodded by Aes Sedai. Update, they showed a clip of Mat in the White Tower talking to Leandrin at New York Comic Con, so he's totally going to be poked and prodded by the Aes Sedai. I suspect we might see Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine all take their accepted tests, though I do hope Nynaeve does hers first. Finally, the girls are likely to be tricked into leaving the White Tower, which would put Mat in a good position to chase after them to help them out. Moving on to Moiraine, Lan, and Rand. Like I mentioned earlier, it's likely that Moiraine will be seeking out some way to regain her ability to channel. The way her powers were cut off in Episode 8 looks far more like a shield being placed on her than her abilities being severed, as we saw both of those in Episode 4. While searching for answers, maybe with a visit to Varen Sedai, I suspect she'll learn that she'll need to seek out a man who can channel to remove the shield. This would lead her back to Ran, who appears to be in Kyrian for some reason based off of the behind-the-scenes sizzle reel. We now know for sure that Moiraine will be going to Kyrian in Season 2 thanks to a clip made by Rosamund for New York Comic Con.
True, Moiraine goes back to Kyrian in Season 2, the city she grew up in, a place of stifling customs where everyone plays mind games.
I suspect Ran will be trying to either prove or disprove some sort of prophecy as he grapples with his identity as the Dragon Reborn. Finally, we saw from the sizzle reel that Perrin appears to be in search of Fane and the Horn with the Shinarans. He meets with Elias, who might be taking the place of the Sniffer Huron from the books. And we also suspect at some point he meets Aiel. More specifically, he meets Aviendha. Most, if not all of the characters meet in Falma. If the lore from the books is being kept the same, Rand has to be at Falma when the heroes of the Horn appear as they follow the Dragon Reborn and the Dragon Banner. This means that we're unlikely to see him go to Tyr. Rand going to the Stone of Tyr might be the piece of books 2 and 3 that's being held off until later. Anyway, Rand will fight Balsamon for what will hopefully be the last time. The White Cloaks will be defeated, the Shanchan repelled, and Rand will meet up with Aiel, which puts him in a position to head to the Waste in Season 3. Now, my guesses may all end up being totally wrong, but there's one thing that we'll all have to brace ourselves for, and that's to expect plot points to be different. This probably doesn't need to be said, but the Wheel of Time television series on Amazon is an adaptation of an entire story that spans 14 books. An adaptation adapts the story, and the story is not the same thing as plot. As a rough example, think about the ways a person could answer the question, "How was your vacation?" The story of a person's vacation would be sharing the high points, the low points, the exciting parts, how people felt, etc. The plot would be describing what literally happened, starting with the airplane flight, then the drive to the hotel, then checking in, and all the minutiae that people don't really want to hear about when asking about your vacation. The story is more important than the plot. This means that we need to prepare ourselves for some beloved plot points getting changed or cut for the sake of the story. I know it's hard. I have a hard time too. These are just a few examples of possible changes to expect. No Heron brands on Rand's hands. The Stone of Tear may be delayed. Nynaeve, Egwene, and Elaine all testing for accepted at roughly the same time. No flicker scene. And maybe actual communication between characters. Or at least sometimes. It wouldn't be the Wheel of Time if everybody actually communicated their thoughts and feelings all of the time. The list goes on because it's impossible to fit 14 books worth of plot into 64 hours of television. So, as far as overarching themes for Season 2, where Season 1 asked the question, who is the Dragon Reborn? I think that Season 2 might be having each of our characters asking themselves, who am I? After Season 1, our major characters are all struggling with a change in understanding who they are. Rand now has to contend with his identity as the Dragon Reborn, as a male channeler, and as an adopted child. Perrin needs to reforge his identity without his wife. He also needs to grasp some understanding of his powers, and I'm sure we'll see the start of his long struggle between peace and violence. Mat has to grapple with the darkness within him. Is he someone who abandons his friends or someone who helps them? Does he abandon his loved ones like his father, or does he stick by them? Egwene has to discover her new role in the White Tower and in the world as a channeler, a path different from the wisdom she thought she'd become. Nynaeve has a similar struggle, but with the added challenge of a block and also a hatred for Aes Sedai. Moiraine will be struggling with being powerless. Who is she if she can't channel? And finally, Lan may find himself being pulled between duty and love, Moiraine and Nynaeve. And here are my predictions for where our characters find themselves emotionally by the end of the season. Rand will begrudgingly accept his role as the Dragon Reborn. Perrin will properly grieve Layla and learn more about his new abilities. Mat will choose to help his friends when they need and to save everyone. Egwene will learn far more about channeling than she ever wanted to, and will be broken down in the process. Nynaeve will figure out her own purpose for training in the tower despite her hatred for Aes Sedai. Moiraine will either discover how to channel again or will carve out a role for herself without the one power. And as far as Lan goes, well, duty is heavier than a mountain. Bonus, if you want an official answer for one of the themes for Season 2, it's how the characters deal with loneliness. So, without getting into details, those are my guesses for Season 2. Let me know in the comments what you think I got right and where I'm totally off base. Next up, I'll start breaking down filming, but first, an updated cast video. I know I've been saying it for months now, but I will get that updated cast video out. To get notifications when that video is released, you can follow me on Twitter at GeekyEddie, or you can subscribe to my channel here on YouTube and hit the bell icon for notifications. In addition to videos, I also post links to news articles on WhatSeries.com when I remember. For the times I don't remember, it's best to follow WhatSeries on Twitter and Instagram. If you happen to have any information for us, please email us at tips@whatseries.com. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.